with the second of a three-part paper entitled The Economic Path Forward. This section deals specifically with the question of the Caribbean as an economic viability. Introduction. We must begin by asking the question, to which Caribbean are we referring? Our starting point may be the Anglophone Caribbean island states that initially constituted the West Indian Federation, which consisted of the following 10 territories: Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Kitts, Nevis, Anguilla, St. Vincent, and St. Lucia. The Federation was inaugurated on the 22nd of April 1958 in Port-of-Spain, Trinidad. This creature was to come to a dramatic end by way of a referendum in Jamaica in 1962 and its consequent secession. This led to the famous statement by Eric Williams, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, that 1 from 10 leaves naught, signifying his equally precipitous decision to withdraw Trinidad and Tobago from the fragile federation arrangement. The present author will discuss this issue no further, it having been extensively discussed by others. The West Indian Federation came to an end in 1962. The relevance of Caribbean economic unity was to be at the center of Caribbean discussion. Williams proposed that the creation of a Caribbean community consisting not only of the 10 members of the Federation, but he sought to include the 3 Guyanas and all the islands of the Caribbean Sea, both independent and non-dependent. The Caribbean countries also expressed the need for closer cooperation with Europe, Africa, and Latin America. A free trade area in the Caribbean was proposed by the premiers of Barbados, British Guyana, and the Chief Minister of Antigua in 1965. This was the Caribbean Free Trade Association, CARIFTA, which came into effect on the 1st of May 1968. It then included Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Guyana, and Antigua. Later, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Jamaica, Montserrat, British Honduras, later known as Belize, became members in May of 1971. In 1972, the Caribbean leaders opted for a transformation into a common market and decided to form the Caribbean Community, CARICOM. At this time, 10 years had passed since the collapse of the West Indian Federation of 1962. The Caribbean Community was officially launched in 1973. This was signed by 11 members. These were to be designated the full members in the Georgetown Accord of 1974. Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts, Nevis, Anguilla, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Belize, Guyana, and Antigua. Later on, other Caribbean islands were to join, including in the community, but not in the common market. These were as follows: A. Bahamas in 1983 as an associate member, British Virgin Islands in 1991, Turks and Caicos 1991, the Cayman Islands 1991, Anguilla 1999, Bermuda 2003, Suriname was to become a member, the 14th member state of the CARICOM in 1995, and Haiti became a full member of CARICOM in 2002. This has been a long and difficult journey from a failed federation of 1962 to a Caribbean community today, 2020. Today, the Caribbean Community CARICOM, Single Market and Economy, SME, is known as the CSME. The recurring dream of a Caribbean Economic Union is now a reality. Input data. This discussion must begin with a definition of what is in fact the basis of Caribbean economy of the future. First, we must consider what are the territories that are at present included to constitute the CARICOM countries as full members and as associate members, together with those countries that constitute the group of observer status. This latter group represents potentially new members or countries that may become members or countries that may become drawn into some defined special relationship in the near future. This union does not mean that we should abandon our old linkages. In fact, we should reinforce them based on a sharper focus, particularly on the diaspora in the North Atlantic countries. These should represent not only the potential market to be explored for greater all-round economic linkage and for the exploitation of another oft-suggested area of consideration, that of joint ventures and investment partnerships. The total landmass area of the region is an eloquent statement in itself, specifically with respect to agriculture. In particular, a primary assessment of the population would suggest quite a good deal of economic potential, re-industrial expansion, as well as the cushion for the domestic market limitations and any other uncertainty. The marine resources offer also other critical, unexplored economic potential, both from fishing as well as with respect to mineral extraction, which so far has been confined to oil and gas exploration. In this section of the paper, the author will discuss a number of tables that represent the basis of the discussion and the problems confronting the Caribbean. The first table is one of CARICOM full members. These territories were listed before, and the total land area of all the full members is approximately 450,000 square kilometers, and a total population of about 18.5 million people. If we turn next to the associate members of CARICOM, we find that of the listed territories, the total landmass is only approximately 1,500 square kilometers and 213,000 people. If we look next at the third table that deals with the CARICOM states that have been granted observer status, we have a total landmass of 4 million square kilometers and a total population of about 228 million people. In other words, CARICOM states, what we call the non-CARICOM states, but are Caribbean states, and in these we include Costa Rica, Panama, Guadeloupe, Martinique, Saint Martin. We have a total land space of 128 square kilometers and a total population of almost 10 million people. In summary, therefore, we see of full members, associate members, members with observer status, and non-CARICOM Caribbean states, totaling a landmass area of little over 4.5 million square kilometers and a total population of roughly 257 million people. This is critical to the discussion. The Caribbean Basin region is in fact more marine space than land space. This is virtually a pond, and the Caribbean Basin is more a marine barrier between encircling islands and the continental territories, and possibly serves as a marine connector platform. The basin represents both an untapped potential source of food, that is fish life, and marine resources in this marine-rich and untapped economic zone. Both of these will deal. The Caribbean Basin is generally considered as running from Bermuda and Bahamas in the north to the Guyanas, Cayenne, French-speaking, Guyana, English-speaking, and Suriname, Dutch-speaking, Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago, and the island Curacao, Aruba, Dutch-speaking in the south. The basin is enclosed in the east by a chain of Caribbean islands stretching from Antigua in the north to Barbados in the south. The territories listed here are the member states of the CARICOM formation, either as full members, associate members, or members with observer status. The basin represents an increase. The basin represents approximately an area of little over 1 million square miles, or 2.7 million square kilometers, lying between latitude 9 degrees and 22 degrees north and longitude 89 degrees and 60 degrees west. The paper, Caribbean and the CARICOM, into countries with territories of area larger than 100 square kilometers. Next, countries with areas between 5,000 kilometers and 100 kilometers, and countries with less than 1,000 kilometers. It does the same thing with respect to the population distribution. In other words, CARICOM members are divided into groups with respect to population. The countries with a population over 5 million, which includes only Haiti, countries with population more than 1 million but less than 5 million, Jamaica and Trinidad, countries with population more than 150,000 but less than 1 million, Bahamas, Suriname, Guyana, Barbados, Belize, and countries with population less than 150,000, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, the Grenadines, St. Kitts, Nevis, Dominica, Grenada, etc. We are now faced with the question of viability. The next question that we must address is the viability of the Caribbean. The Caribbean constituents represent 20 separate territories, full members 15, 5 associate members, and a number of countries with observer status. Of the full members, except Haiti, the total population is approximately 7.5 million, the old CARICOM market, and therefore, should we include Haiti, this would raise the number of total population to approximately 18 million, or roughly an increase of 140%. The addition of the associate members, Cayman, Turks and Caicos, etc., would increase the total population by 600,000. So the full members, the associate members, would give us a total of, as I said, of little over 18 million people. This would mean a total increase in the potential market from 7.6 million to 18.6. In other words, an increase of 11 million people. Very interesting. This sequential addition can be considered, as I said, of 7.6 million to 18.6 million. In addition to Cuba, this would mean a further addition of approximately 11 million. The Dominican Republic would add a further 10.6 million to make this 40.2 million. And Venezuela would add a further 31.7 million approximately, to a grand total of 71.9, roughly 72 million people. An addition of Colombia, Puerto Rico, and Mexico would take the number to roughly 250 million people. Here is the theoretical potential population market of moving from 7.6 million of the existing CARICOM market to roughly 72 million. This represents a total increase of 64 million persons. The crude mathematics is very interesting, but not without considerable problems. We must admit, since this is across language, cultural and historical barriers, which must not be underestimated. This represents only a crude potential for which there is no guarantee and presents here purely for speculative consideration. In other words, 7.6 million to 18.6 million to 72.6 million to 250 million. What we have done so far is to present two characteristics of the Caribbean region. One is population size and, by extension, its market. And two, the total land mass, which represents, in a crude sense, economic potential of one kind or the other. And as been pointed out, the increase in number from 7.6 million to 72 million represents a crude approximation of potential capacity, not necessarily a potential market at this moment. But it tells us that if we want to survive some of the many challenges with which the region is confronted, that we must address the question of a wider Caribbean construct, what I will call a CARICOM of post-COVID-19 or 2021. We have to look at these other territories that are associate members or observer status, both because of their potential as a market for our goods and services and for source of potential economic factors, both human, mining, and agricultural. We, at this point, can next attempt to group those countries that were previously discussed according to dominant industrial and economic sectors. And we have the countries involved in mining, Suriname in bauxite, Guyana bauxite, more recently petroleum as well as gold, Jamaica bauxite and cement, Trinidad asphalt, cement, petroleum gas. The other group, the countries involved in forestry, forest industry and timber products, Suriname, Guyana, Belize and Jamaica. In the era of globalization and common markets and of free market zones, it is necessary to consider industrial activities both for the possible cooperation and as existing competition. This view across the Caribbean Basin as an economic zone, while offering countless challenges, does offer some prospect of significant mutual benefits. The Association of Caribbean States, the ACS, was formed on the 24th of July 1994. Here the author remembers one of the first issues which the ACS attacked was the question of common threats to the region. This was to constitute the issue of two principal natural hazards which haunt the Caribbean Basin: hurricanes and tropical storms, that is atmospheric and climate change, on the one hand, and earthquakes, tsunamis, the seismic hazards, and volcanic eruption on the other. The focus was therefore centered on the question of the geotechnical threats, risk analysis for the region, as well as the consequences. The issue of development of the regional disaster preparedness regime or plan, including the question of building codes and of standards, was critical. The author was part of the Regional Working Committee to execute this task for the Caribbean Basin region. With the intensification of the climate crisis brought on by global warming, the development of common strategies for small island developing states, SIDS, will be even more pressing and urgent. Not only will the regional population be exposed to these risks, but they will now be spread over the entire agricultural sector, both hilly and lowland and coastal, as well as the entire infrastructure, the built environment in the region of ACS. All these issues will suggest the urgent need for the regional strategy developed in common. The tsunami threat in the region is itself a pressing call for common defense strategies. Hurricanes and tropical storms are annual events that threaten the entire region, while earthquakes, highly localized, have visited certain areas of the region with devastating impact, from Jamaica and Haiti in the north to Antigua in the east. We should note also that there are 16 active volcanoes in the region, and the threat of tsunami is ever present throughout the entire region of the Caribbean region. The next issue that we must discuss is globalization and regional trade. Our new economic base will have to be premised either on raw materials generated here in the West Indies itself, or on imported material from outside the region. If it is to be the latter, that is outside the region, then alliances and partnerships will of necessity have to be developed with some urgency. With this latter idea in mind, and also with the issue of developing markets for our proposed goods, we must consider our present vulnerability with the present alignment almost exclusively with the North Atlantic countries. This is our greatest vulnerability, as the COVID-19 pandemic has clearly shown. The first exploration should long have included strengthening links with countries of Central and South America, especially those with significant populations of descendants of African slaves, for example, Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia, Venezuela, and Brazil. Brazil in the main, especially since they offer greater proximity of market. At present, we have almost zero trade with these territories. All these have been the focus of previous overtures, not very successful. The initiative should be explored with some urgency. The next round of initiatives must be with the serious consideration for both partnerships and markets with transatlantic South-to-South focus. There must be a resumed initiative with the countries of the African continent, especially the West Coast states, where there are historical links. These cannot be underestimated. Again, here there have been some initiatives with varying degrees of receptivity and success. Since as early as the middle of the 20th century, from the Pan-African conferences of 1897 and up to 1940s. The next area that we must explore is that of partnerships and markets within the Indian subcontinent as well as Sri Lanka. Here the ethnic ties should be more seriously explored. India is one of the BRICS that have been developing apace and has embraced the platform of the Industrial Revolution. We have more than cricket, ethnicity, language, and culture in common. We must not be trapped with the idea that our economic development is only with the age-old North Atlantic partners. COVID-19 has made this recalibration not only necessary but opportune. Our future has long been identified as in the direction with the South-to-South trade. This idea presented here is not new, but still or even more valid today. Brazil has the largest population of Africans outside of the African continent, approximately 100 million. At present, we should note that not a single African state has sought observer status in the ACS. This must be addressed and urgently remedied. The question of an international African-Caribbean Chamber of Industry and Commerce should be explored, as well as a similar initiative with the Asian and Caribbean states. The next area that we must address is manufacturing, industrialization, and the Industrial Revolution. Here we must begin by asking the question, where are the industrial and manufacturing sectors of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean located on the global industrial spectrum? Where are we with respect to the array of the industrial revolutions? Are we in the region ready to be a serious partner in the manufacturing process of the 21st century? Has robotics been employed to any significance in any of our manufacturing processes? What is the level of technological development or maturity in Trinidad and Tobago's involvement in our manufacturing and industrial processes? What is the nature and status of the plans within the private sector in particular? What is the state of its readiness to enter the 21st century technology? Where are the government's plans to upgrade our technological capacity and prepare us for the fourth industrial revolution, that is from 1990 to 2030? How ready is our educational system to engage our citizens in participating in this new industrial age? Not only must we, as a society and as the private sector specifically, together with the public sector, set about addressing the question of the new science and technology age, but they must sit down together with the university community and develop a genuine path for the future of manufacturing and industrial sector in Trinidad and Tobago. Once we were the leaders in the region in the technology age, Trinidad and Tobago that is, riding on the platform of oil and gas and petrochemicals. That is the development of Savanetta Industrial Estate of the 1950s and the surge with the Point Litas Industrial Estate of the 1970s. We may now ask, where are we with respect to the next phase of global industrial development? This is where our developmental focus must be placed. A science and technology policy cannot at this stage be developed by the public sector all alone, or by the university academic community by itself in isolation. The exercise must be a tripartite undertaking if it is to be appropriate and successful. That is, it must include the private sector, the public sector, and the university community. The exercise was missing in the 1970s post-Black Power revolution. And today, in 2021, as we all are witnessing the winding down of the petroleum industry and the petrochemical era, Petrotrin, NP, God forbids NGC, we have not, as a society, addressed the climate change crisis and the full range of its implication, both threats and opportunities. We have not, as a society, yet begun to prepare for the events of the next 10 years in this respect. There has been no serious development of the potential of solar and wind industries from the manufacturing sector. We remain wedded to fossil fuel and petroleum in particular. We have not begun to plan for the full impact of global warming and especially mean sea level rise and its consequences that are going to negatively impact all of our coastal communities, our infrastructure, and in particular our agriculture and tourism sector.